Hi, my name is Simon Hedley, known to my clients and partners as a strategic alchemist and an ultimate connector. I'm a chartered accountant who brings together and bridges the worlds of business philosophy, finance, marketing, optimization, ontology, and so much more. Always focused on one thing, the simple idea that can make the difference to people and projects so we can tip the scales in their favor and get them complete. Pause, Stop, Reset is all about the three little words that can make the difference. They have for me and my clients, and I hope they will for you too. During the show, you'll get to learn about my guests' real-life experiences and the insights and lessons they've learned as they've navigated the resets in their personal and business lives, which you'll be able to leverage yourself. So let's start the show. Hello, I'm Simon Hedley, and welcome to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset. Today I'm joined by the one and only Yuri Choi. We first connected a few years ago, and I've been inspired watching as she travels the world in her nomad life. But much more than that, Yuri's an author and coach. Now, she actually wrote a book called Create Your Own Happiness, and she works as a coach with entrepreneurs and high performers. And that is just the start of what this incredible person has been up to over the last few years. And so I'm super excited to have you meet my friend Yuri today. And without further ado, Yuri, welcome to Pause, Stop, Reset.
Thank you. It's so amazing to finally connect. I know we've been going back and forth for a while, and it's so amazing to speak with you.
Yeah, especially over lockdown and the joy of the social media world. You sort of can interact with people, but having actual time to meet up and properly have deep conversations, it makes a difference, I think, and that's what we're going to do today. For people that may not know you yet or haven't caught up with your resets, who are you and what are you focused on today?
Yeah. And first of all, thank you so much for having me here. You know, I know every time we connected, you had such amazing energy, and I know we have a similar mission. So it's really great to be here. As far as myself goes, and I'm sure we'll get into some of the, the history of why I started doing this, but I'm a performance coach for high achievers and entrepreneurs, just like you said. I'm just really passionate about really helping leaders to become their best self, lead with their heart, live in an abundant mindset where they can start to change their organization, change their corners of the world, and really, live in that realm of infinite possibilities, knowing that they can always create new possibilities from wherever they are. So I typically work with people who are, stressed or burnt out, and they feel stuck and they want to move into a place where they get to feel powerful and just enjoying their life, loving their life. That's what it's about. So I started this journey really because it's actually pretty personal. And I think you've heard some of this on, in the past. But, for me, I was actually in the corporate world for over 10 years, and it wasn't bad. It was something I enjoyed. But at the same time, I always knew that I was meant to do something more. But it wasn't until my dad got ill with cancer in 2015, and he battled cancer for 2.5 years. And after he passed away, that's when I really realized that life is fragile and life ends. And when my life ends, I wanted to be able to look back and say, I did something meaningful. I lived, my life out fully. And even if that means being scared, taking risks, I wanted to really just go for it. And also realizing that, people, whether it's mental or physical, it really just all comes down to stress and emotional and spiritual health, or the lack of. That's what happened to my dad. That's what happened to my mom. It's what happened to a lot of people I know. So, my mission is really to help people not even get to that point, so that, we can quote unquote catch them way before they get there and help them, have some tools under their belt where my parents didn't have, or, the people that I love who suffered this way didn't have before, so they can really pull themselves out of these, situations that they're in, or the mindset that they're in, and live in a world where they get to really just enjoy themselves, enjoy their life fully, and love it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're very aligned on the mission, and it's one of those things, as you get better and stronger, the games get bigger often, whether it's helping larger communities, taking on global projects, or just simply the challenge of getting older, right? And I'm sorry you went through that with your father, but it's often those moments that cause us to reset, that cause us to rethink, no, I've been through my own. And it also helps us become, I think, more aware of, the fragility or what matters on a daily basis.
Yeah. I'm sure you feel this way too, but I'm almost at a point where I even see some of these quote unquote difficult things that's happened as a blessing, truly. Of course, I don't wish upon, anyone to get sick with cancer. I really don't want my, dad to have gone through that experience. However, that was the inevitable. That was the unfolding of what was supposed to happen. And when it did, I feel like it really, just like you said, it really gave me an opportunity to reset and realign, and in a way, it was a huge blessing. So,
yeah, I try to be a bit Taoist, even though I'm a British guy. The idea of things being on the way rather than in the way, but it's also easy often with hindsight. At the time when you're going through the dark nights of the soul, you need somebody to reach out to. That's kind of what the show's for. If you can't have any, like, we're here for that for you. But no, 100%. And I this is not about me today, but I got hit by a bit of a lockdown, and
that's okay.
that's another show. So we have a lot to talk about. So if you look back, you mentioned your father and leaving your corporate career. What have been the biggest shifts and resets you've been through?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I literally think those are some of the biggest moments where I had to realign and reset. So basically how it happened for me was, when my dad passed away, I was just struck with this whole new, I don't even know how to, really say it, but just like this new understanding of how life is and how death is. And I don't think you can really truly understand life until you experience death. And of course, seeing it from somebody that you really love and that was so close to me, it was so real. So after he passed away, I knew that things had to change for me, because at the time I wasn't that happy at my corporate job. I was just really going through the rinse, wash, repeat cycle of, going through the motion of going to the, job, going to work and making good money. But like, it didn't really mean much anymore at the end because I didn't feel happy. And so after he passed away, there's actually this whole spiritual thing that happened with a butterfly. We can totally go into that later if you want. But basically, I got a sign from the universe that it was time for me to really trust and take a leap of faith. And I quit my corporate job with not much planning, to be honest, but I knew deep down in my heart, it was the very thing I had to do intuitively. And I kind of played with the universe for a couple months where I just went and did things that excited my soul. And that included really going deep into my art at the time. Painting for me at the time was like a healing modality. So I painted a ton, like every day for a couple months. And it was so interesting because people started to notice this. I don't know if I knew you back then when I was in this phase of like being an artist, but basically people started to commission my art. And I've never been trained in art. I'm not like a quote unquote technically a good artist, but people can see how passionate and how much soul was in my art. So they started commissioning it. They started buying my art. So within months, I was being featured at the World of Dance as the featured artist doing a mural on this giant like box. And it just got wild. And I'm like, wow, if I can do that in just a few months of just pouring my soul out, pouring my heart out, what is actually possible if I just really focus, right? Like that didn't even happen, me just trying, but like what would happen if I really get clear on what it is I'm here to do and focus on that? Like what could, possibly, unfold for me? So at the time, I knew I wanted to help people in some way. So a little bit about my story is that, one of my other parents basically almost died of suicide when I was 17. And she survived, thankfully. But when she did, I really wanted to help people and be an advocate for mental health in some way. So that's been a huge part of my journey. And I knew I wanted to help people. And along that journey, I've also helped a few people really, literally, stop themselves from taking their life. I just had random situations that would come up in my vortex where I got to help them. And I really see it as a gift that was given to me because that really affirmed for me that this is what I'm here to do. Not literally walk people off the edge like that all the time, but really impact people in a deep way where they get to really cherish their life. And I knew I had it in me to do that. So yeah, after that, I reset, realign, just like you would say. And I hired a coach at the time who really helped me for the first time, like talk about my dreams, talk about like what I really wanted, talk about how I want to help people and how passionate I am. And I really didn't even have space to talk about these things, openly and honestly until then. So I think that was a big moment for me, and just, letting things unfold, which allowed me to be on that path of, healing and self-help. So yeah.
That's really clear. And you say lots of synergies there, and that importance of a space to talk, so vital. We've been running a talking group for nearly 2 decades now, but the problem is
That's amazing.
Yeah, but it's very quiet, right? Because especially in the industries online, especially today, we're in 2023 now, everybody's hyper connected. So your safe space to talk isn't quite so safe because often everybody sort of talks to everybody else behind the scenes. And not that there aren't safe spaces, but having really spaces where you can properly talk and share and explore is so vital. You touched on it. It's having the ability to help other people stop. Often with Pause, Stop, Reset, it's about ourselves. But actually, when it was designed as a modality, it was to help others learn how to do that for themselves. And in those moments where we're going to sort of hyper react and do something we regret later, to have that moment just to take a pause, to have a choice and listen to ourselves and find a way through. And it isn't always easy. And you're clearly a person that I would say go gets things done, right? You're a star profile, you're out there shining. I'm curious, out of these 3 things of taking a pause, stopping and resetting, which has been the hardest for you, and why do you think that was?
Yeah. And I feel like I had many, many moments where I had to do this, even as a young child. But I would still say my dad's passing was probably the hardest, because that was the first time that I experienced death. And actually, ironically, maybe not even ironic, maybe it's exactly the divine timing of all this. But right before I got on this call 30 minutes ago, I just got the news my great aunt just passed away, and she lived till 100. So yeah. And I'm, it's just like another reminder where life is so, it has an expiration date. And not that we should dwell on that, but I think it's something that's really powerful to be present to. And thank you for your words. And I think it's just really good to know that there's an ending, because that's what makes this time, every single day, every single moment, special. And it allows us to be intentional, allows us to, create memories, create moments that's really beautiful and powerful. So yeah, I think for me, experiencing his death was really, really a big moment where I just stopped and reorganized everything that I thought I knew about life and death and so on. And not only that, but he really helped me understand death on a very spiritual way. I remember he, because, and I think cancer is probably one of the worst journeys for, anyone involved to watch or to go through, I would imagine. And though one good thing that I will say is that you do have a lot of time, maybe not a lot of time depending on the situation, but you do have some time, it's coming. So you get to have these difficult, vulnerable conversations. And one of the things that I talked to my dad about was, Dad, like, are you scared to die? I mean, how many people can really say that they get to ask their parents these kind of questions and, know that, they will give you the wisdom that you need to hear at that moment. And anyway, so my dad was like, I'm not scared to die. He was a very spiritual person. I'm not scared to die. I'm just going in for an outfit change. And he believed that with his whole heart. And he was not scared at all. I never saw fear as he was approaching death, even though there was discomfort in his body and obviously lots of pain, but in his spirit, he was never scared. And that was just really inspiring for me. And I wanted to live a life where I get to know that for the most of my life. And I get to know that when I'm in that position one day, that I'm not scared. So, or regret anything really.
And just acknowledge the way you're sharing about this, which not many can do. And if you're willing to, in a slight sort of pause of what we're doing, is it okay if we do something about your relative that just passed? Would that be okay? Just to acknowledge her and bring her into the conversation.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was going on, by the way. I felt it with you when you were texting this morning before the show. I was like, something's not right. Something's happened. But I was like, it's just me. So we're laughing about it. But just if you would, what was her name and what's one of the things you most remember about her? Because obviously you're here because of her and the family that sort of brought you to here, right? That generational thing carrying on. But I just get to acknowledge her.
Yeah, thank you so much for creating that space. I call her 작은 고모 할머니, which basically just translates to great aunt, I guess, but that's what I call her. But in Korean, we call her by that. And she's somebody who would always make space for me to play. Like I would be, 7 years old. None of the adults would pay attention to me or want to play. I was an only child. And she would just, always make time and space for me to hang out with her. She would always entertain me, play cards, like all the things that you're supposed to do with your sibling, but you can't because you're an only child. And she was a very, very special woman. And she lived till 100. She just had her 100th birthday. So she lived a full life, very, very full. And I'm sad. And I think I know in my heart that she lived a really beautiful life. And I think, I know that she's at peace. And I hope that I can live a life like that, where I get to, live long and be loved. And she was with her family until the very end. And so thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And but I think the reason, I appreciate you creating space for this, because I do think that life isn't as picture perfect as, people want to make it sometimes, especially in this era of social media and all this stuff. And I try my best to share some of these stories and go into the depth of some things that are potentially scary or weird, quote unquote, or taboo or whatever, because this is the real stuff, and I could have easily put on a face and say, like great, interview that I get to be on, which it is great, but it's definitely something that's present for me. So I appreciate that.
There's an old quote I came across from Larry Mendez in New York about 15 years ago, which is the summary of it is basically human beings need to be known to be loved, divine beings need to be loved to be known. And the adjunct to that is, I think we're all divine, not in some weird way, but there is this sort of divine spark that children have and sort of gets lost as we get older. And it's so easy to get caught up in the followers and the business. And I'm working a little sidetrack. I said to you, like, the conversation flows sometime. In the last week, I've seen some people online interacting who are great at what they do, but they forget the humanity of the interactions. They go into sort of closing mode. So what brings you to the call today? Okay, good. So it's like, just take a step back. Sometimes things happen that aren't, what it seems to be. And that real communication, that real listening, it's something I've seen. I think I touched on with you when we were messaging a few months ago. Like there's been shifts in you over the last year or two where you're more coming from this like grounded heart space, which I struggle to do, to be blunt. I'm sort of a Southern speaking Tunbridge Wells boy, but I come from up north. My real language is communication and touch and like being a northerner, like, hello lad, how you getting on? But we learn the accountant to go, good morning, Yuri, how are you doing? Very good. Back to the meeting. And we lock down. It's not about de-armoring. It's just learning to communicate in a world that's so full of different experiences and priorities, different communication styles and culture. I mean, you mentioned your sort of Korean heritage side of it, massive family stuff there in Korea, right? Amazing culture that most of us in the West don't know anything about, despite, the cheesy K-pop stuff. I think not cheesy, but like, we don't really know the heart of the cultures, let alone the philosophies behind them. So like, I just acknowledge you for being here and sharing the way you are. And you get a sense of, again, this is part of the show, right? If you're liking Yuri's energy, you'll find how to learn about her more online. And that's really what it all is. And it's funny how you touched on it. Like I lost my father when I was 2 and others over the years. And it gives you a different reality to sort of the Disney world. Everything's fine, little bubble. No, there is stuff that goes on good and bad and sideways. And often I know the people you and I have been working with, these high performers, on the surface, it's flying. They're doing $1 million in a day on sales, but behind the scenes, not so rosy sometimes. And we're going to little pause, stop, reset back in the moment, as we say. And I'm just curious if this is one of the sort of the old questions we normally ask, and I'm sure you've been around this before. If you sort of look back at your life today and you could send back in that sort of Merlin method timeliney way, all those important lessons to your younger self, what's like the most important, like little Yuri needs to know this. And what's that for you, do you think?
Yes. I was actually just reflecting on this before a few days ago too. So it's perfect timing. And with that said, I think that everything always works out. The universe always unfolds and conspires for us. And in those moments, and I think I actually deep down knew this, and I think that's a part of the reason I was able to be resilient through the hardships and challenges that I did go through in my life. But like really knowing that, like really holding her and telling her that, and that there's a season for everything. That there is kind of like the rhythm, right? Like the law of rhythm from the universal laws, which is that, there's a season for everything. There's a reason that, well, at least most parts of the world, there's 4 seasons, right? Or a couple seasons at least. There's spring, there's summer, there's fall and winter, and you can't get to summer in the middle of a winter. Like you just can't. You just have to go through the motion of being in winter and then go into spring and then summer comes. But, nowadays we are so used to getting things so instantly, right? Instant gratification. And a lot of that is amazing. Don't get me wrong. Like the one thing that I really miss being in Bali is Amazon, because everything gets there so fast, but we're so used to that. And it's not particularly natural sometimes. There's this component of patience, which is something I'm, still practicing. I don't think I'm perfect at it at all. However, when I know, like, I just remember this really hard day I was having, and when my dad was sick, and my mom, I think she texted me at the time, and she's like, just remember that this shall too pass. And, I think what she was saying is that there's a season for everything. And I was recently listening to Dr. Wayne Dyer, and he talks about this too. There's a season to grow. There's a season to be sad. There's a season to grieve. There's a season to be happy. There's a season to be fulfilled. There's a season to give. There's a season to receive. There's a season for everything. And instead of like trying to fight it every step of the way, which for some reason, in our culture, we honor that so much. We amplify that, honor so much, like the badge of honor, like we push through everything and we made it happen, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I as a recovering type A person, I've done that, but sometimes it's not natural, and it causes, challenges in our health, challenges in our mental and spiritual well-being, because sometimes it's just simply not natural. And of course there's a season for pushing too, season for really going, full force. And then there's a season to pull back. And I think that would have really helped me, because looking back, I think there were definitely seasons that I pushed and pushed and pushed, when it was actually a season to grieve. It was a season to learn. It was a season to pause, just like you would say, pause and, realign. It was a different season, but I wanted it to be a certain way, because that's what at least what I learned from the corner of my society or my world that I was in, that was the only way to get through anything. And while I did actually accomplish a lot of things during that time, because just like, when you're in survival mode, sometimes you like go and there is some power in that. However, we burn out and it hits a wall, and it's not ever like a sustainable kind of force. In fact, it'll catch up and it'll force you somehow to deal with whatever it is and go into that season that you're supposed to be in, if that makes sense. So I think those two things, that everything is already working out, even the moments that feel really, really painful or really, really hard. And that there's a season for everything. And also and I think this is something that's present for me, for my clients as well as for me. It's not just a season to go hard, but there's actually a season to celebrate too. There's a season to just enjoy the flow. And I think a lot of high achievers miss that part too. They're so used to and almost addicted to building higher and bigger and expanding, that they forget that there's also a season to just like be and connect, enjoy the fruits of labor. I mean, imagine if there was a tree that it just continually pumps out fruit, but like don't care if it gets eaten or whatever. Like, what good is that going to do? So, yeah.
Really, really good reminders and timely. We've been working on the yearbook and it's just turned to spring here, Yuri. And over Christmas, it's dark in the UK. It's cold in the UK. I've been looking at your Bali stuff going, I want to be in Bali. But there's things keeping me here, and that choice to be here, right? I love the winter as well, but it is that bit of like, you can't force it into summer, and trying to launch something at the wrong time in business, or that it's this really fascinating line, right, between making the difference and not being in complacency, but also actually being with what is as it is, as opposed to fighting it. And as you said so eloquently, in a world of instant Amazon Prime Now deliveries, there is no season, there is no 24/7ness to, life of waking up in evenings and night times. And it gets very buzzy, just nonstop until you get hit by reality going, wait a minute, and your body can't carry on the way it was. Very, 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 very true. And actually, and smiling away to myself. We'll go on there. I think, yes. One of the things I know for me, and when I need to sort of pause, stop, reset, I sort of delve into books and movies. I'm just curious if there are any books and movies that help you sort of reset when you need to.
Oh my gosh. I mean, books, so many. Movies, it's very limited because I actually don't watch that many movies or, TV. But I will say this, after I quit my corporate job, I literally watched The Secret every day.
Aha, yes.
And I know that's so cliche, but I loved it so much. I just wanted it to brainwash me, which I think it kind of did. I think it worked.
Yeah, no, the actual program was to watch it at least once a day, every day, 28 days with somebody else. And having worked
really?
So there's a whole thing with Rhonda and where that show came from. People like Michael Beckwith, I'm sure you've met over your travels, and others in The Secret. There was the story of The Secret, and there was the story of the content and context behind The Secret. And it was part of a whole set of conversation distinctions, but no, very much is staying in that vibration and keeping alive, not in a delusional way, but just to really rewire your brain and what's possible, and that thinking and that focus of the RSA, the reticular activating systems. You hit one of my little happy buzzy words, that The Secret was a very interesting shift piece. Also, What the Bleep? Do you ever watch the Bleep?
Yes. I'm obsessed with Dr. Joe Dispenza. Actually, a lot of his books changed my life as well. But, The Secret, I do have some stories around it because and this is the power of visualizing and really being, tuned into a certain frequency. And I remember like every time I watch it, I mean, in the beginning, it was just really to soothe me. And then later on, though, I started dreaming. I'm like, oh, I want to be like them. And then later on, I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to like meet them and like work with them sometime in some capacity. And it's so cool. I'll never forget one of these, I think it was a couple of years ago, one of my mentors at the time was like, hey, I'm going to speak at this event and I need someone to kind of help me a little bit. Do you want to come? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? Right. So and it was one of those things, like it was like a full body yes in my body. And I think it's so important to listen to that, by the way. That's a whole different conversation. But anyway, so I was like, yeah, it was so easy of a yes for me. Show up, literally half the people from The Secret are also speaking. So I got to like be behind the scene, like meet them. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Right. And I remember I was so excited. Like it was just like a confirmation that this stuff is real. And then now I'm in a book series with some of the people from there, which is so crazy to think about, like John Ostroff and Marie Diamond. Like it's crazy. So it works. I mean, there's so many different stories I can share around manifestation and all the things that The Secret talks about, but like directly, it also manifested too because I watched the movie so much. And I still watch it time to time. Actually, it's a movie that I continue to go back to. There's always something new that I can learn. And What the Bleep, I did watch it once. That one, I watched it, but I wasn't like as obsessive about it. But I do love Dr. Joe Dispenza and I love his work too. And I teach a lot of that as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting time because this is the stuff that 1,000 years ago was known but not talked about. And now more and more it's becoming commonplace, which is kind of interesting. And the question of what's next as we emerge as this new hybrid between information, technology, heart, old worlds, interesting times. And I know many people listening to the show are looking to make a shift for themselves and what's possible. And, what's your biggest suggestion? We have a million people listening. This is your Oprah moment, as they say. What's your 2-minute takeaway? What do you want everybody to go do that's going to help them shift what's possible for their lives?
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways that we can shift things to happen, pause, stop, and reset, as you say. I think that's absolutely available when these big events happen in our lives. And a lot of us, I think that's what pushes us into that realm of we're kind of forced to by the universe. Another thing I learned over the years is that we can do that proactively as well. We don't have to wait until a big catastrophe. I can't say the word right now. We don't have to wait until the big thing to happen so that we're forced into space of having to reflect and having to realign. But we can do this on a daily basis. We can do it moment by moment. We can do it weekly. We can do it monthly. We can do it all the time. And the more that we do it, I think it helps us realign and actually allows us to embody. And I think that's the word that's been really powerful for me in the last couple of years, which is embodiment. It's one thing to know all this stuff in our head. And I think that's where, people like you and I come in, which is that it's one thing to know, but it's a whole nother thing to practice and continue to realign, continue to tune into the actual frequency of what their best self is or what they're moving towards. And it's the embodiment of it. So yeah, I think, we can do it when big things happen in our lives, but also we can do it proactively where we continue to realign to who we're becoming.
Very clear. And the other side of that coin, if somebody's having what my friend Jamie calls a dark night of the soul, those moments where the hours drag on for years and, what's your, any tips on getting through those bad moments?
Yeah. So you mean when people are already kind of in that spiral?
100%. It's there's a spiral going down really quick into the abyss and there's no way out. And even though you're going, stop, the handbrake's not working. It's
yeah. I mean, if that's the case, I think we just need to get out of the car and just calm down. And if the car's not working and it's moving forward, you got to get out of there and calm your nervous system down. I think, it's good to just pause. It's good to take some days off, weeks off, months off, whatever it is that you need. If you really feel like you're in a place where you have fallen so deep into survival mode and nothing's working, you're completely just hitting a wall. It's time to really, really just pause and just create some space to be bored, create some space to rest. I mean, it's literally a nervous system thing, right? We get to let it calm down on a physiological level. Just kind of a metaphor. A few days ago, I was riding my bike and I fell and it wasn't a big fall at all. I'm fine. But in that moment, my body kind of went into this shock, oh my God, I just fell. And I could sense, because I'm so tuned into the state of my body nowadays, at the energetic state at least. So I was very much aware that even though I was fine, I could sense that my body kind of went into a shock. And it wasn't even a crazy fall, but anything could trigger that. It doesn't even actually have to be physical trauma. It could be anything that triggers that, right? So I noticed this and I kind of went into cocoon mode. I kind of cocooned and, didn't do a lot. I mean, I worked and I focused on what I wanted to do, but I kind of reduced my social time or things that I typically do and just kind of listened to my body and just gave it exactly what it needed for the last couple of days. And this was a couple weeks ago, so the last couple of days of that event, but or post the event anyway. So yeah, I really just went into a space of rest. And again, I used to be a crazy type A person where every minute of my life was planned, and I went with it. And this was kind of out of the realm of keeping your integrity. It was almost obsessive back in the day, as any type A person can probably.
Hyper time blocked, including waking up, going to the restroom, having the food. There's 24 hours a day blocked in to do what to do, right? The extreme of this. There's no breaks, no buffers. The next 400 years.
Oh, yes. Yes, exactly. And like you could literally ask me like, hey, what are you doing 3 months out on this Tuesday? I could probably tell you back then, which is effective, which is efficient, but not always good for your body and your heart. Anyway, so I rested a lot. And I think resting, and I used to hate it when my mom or anyone that would see me, the way that they saw me do things, they're like, you need to like chill or rest. I hated resting. I literally didn't use the word chill in my vocabulary because I didn't understand it. And so for me, resting and being able to rest and giving myself the permission to do so is actually a big deal, something that I practiced. So I think when people are going into that space, go take a nap. Go sleep a little bit more, slow down, because it's that, from that place of, having the space in your mind, so having the space in your brain and your soul and your heart that you can actually reflect and actually redirect. Because if you're redirecting from that place of spiraling, you can still redirect, but you're coming from a place of survival. You're coming from a place of fear-based decisions, which isn't, from my experience and, from what we know about being in that state, it's not always the most aligned decision. It's going to be the decision that's most immediately helpful to get out of that. So short-term, coping modalities, right? So that could be drinking a ton, right? Like we're tired, we're stressed. So what do people do? They eat a ton, they drink a ton. I'm speaking from my experience, what I used to do. I didn't know how to deal with stress, right? So, and then of course, we all know that only makes you spiral more for many, many reasons. Or you go lash out at somebody for no reason and it ruins your relationship or whatever. But when you like give yourself some space to calm your nervous system down and come to that place of like feeling relaxed and then redirecting, it's going to be much more of a clear, powerful, intentional decision, which might look like it's actually inefficient in the short term, right? Because it's going to take some time. It might take a little bit more time. It might not be an immediate decision, but it's going to be a super powerful, intentional decision, which in the long term, it's actually going to do more good than have consequences.
Really clear and really helpful. And this dance between, memento mori, we could die today, and you're here for the long run. Is such a fascinating bit of the human journey. When you're 5-10 years old, everything is immediate. I'm in my 40s now. I've got friends that you said your great aunt just passed at 100. It's a longer journey than we realize. And those decades go very quick and very slow in fascinating times. And I love that you're out in Bali enjoying that. And I'm mentally taking myself to Bali, where my friends have been many times, and in places to enjoy the beach and that relaxing environment, as opposed to a hectic trading floor in New York or London. We're coming up, not to the end of the show, but nearly sort of time to sort of shift the gears a little bit. I like giving people focused takeaways. And if somebody's listening in right now, what's the one takeaway when they're talking to their friend in the office tomorrow or on the phone? You want them, and Yuri said, what's like the Yuri takeaway?
Yeah. I think every moment we have an option to either live in a fear-based mindset, scarcity mindset, survival mindset, or on the other side of that is living in an abundant, creative, loving mindset. And every moment offers an opportunity for us to go either way. And in those moments, I love that you use the word strategic alchemy lab, because I love the idea of being an alchemist, because I think every time we transmute that fear energy into loving energy, we're literally changing the world. I think those are the micro moments we can change the world. So every moment that we have, we can really choose into like that loving intention or living in that creative mindset. So the more that we can do that, I think that gets to be powerful. So just remembering that we're an alchemist, we're a creator of those moments, and we can have the ability to access that at any time. And it's such a simple thing, but if we can really apply that, I think it'll change our lives. It has changed mine. So
beautifully said. I love that you get it. One of my old crazy experiences was out in Hawaii, and they say you can be in Hawaii miserable or happy. Hawaii is okay either way, right? you're the one that transforms the experience. And it's really fascinating, whether it's waiting for a plane. And suddenly I often find in those moments when you step into, you said, that space of sort of infinite abundance, love, and something else, infinite possibilities, that there always is. Mathematics on my backgrounds, math gets it wrong. We think the future is like correlated on the past. It really isn't. It looks like it is, but it isn't. Suddenly things happen. Like, how did that happen? Those moments when you step out of being in the robot routine is where it gets really exciting. And hopefully, and this is part of the bigger conversation, I think people like you doing what you do, impacting others and rippling and rippling and rippling, we're getting more of a society that is stepping into the being space as opposed to the how much can I get from IKEA today? You know, it's a shift. But also productively, it isn't about sitting in an ashram going, nothing wrong with that. But there's a space of this sort of grounding of these ideas and actually producing in whole different ways, which is, I know what you've been doing really well, which is, again, why we're here today. And I'm going to be a bit sneaky, add an extra question into the mix. One of the things we've been working on is this idea of chaos to clarity, and you've touched on these subjects, not knowing that, I think.
Okay.
And how to get out of your own way and remember what really matters. And I'm curious today for you, what matters to Yuri? Like what would you say matters in the world?
What matters to me? I think, I know this is so cliche and it is probably a little bit vague, but I think if we really get it, it really just comes down to this, is that we get to love. We get to live in the frequency of love as much as possible, period. I've been thinking about this a lot. So this is really random, but the other weekend, during my cocoon phase, I really got randomly excited about astrophysics. So I started reading and listening to a bunch of podcasts and all of this stuff. And I think, at the end of the day, at the end of learning all this, I kind of fell into this like little existential crisis. I'm like, wait, we are so small in this universe. It's like overwhelming. We're not even like a dot when we zoom out to the galaxy and then the multiple galaxies and the multiple universes, like whatever is out there. So I kind of fell into that space. And then when I got to that like space of like, what am I really doing? Like, what are we really here for? If I'm just a dot, like, what can I do that really matters? And when I really, really dug deep, it's just about connection. It's just about love. I mean, that's the only human thing that's truly human, I think. Nowadays you look at AI, I mean, these, AI systems are doing everything basically and better than us. It's not about the doing. It never was, because that can be always systemized and that can be always automated. But one thing I believe that will never be taken away from us as human beings is that we get to love. We get to just really love other humans, and not in just a romantic way, but just like in that deep way. And I think as long as we really tune into that, everything else falls into place. Like, one of the things I tell my clients, if they're focusing too much on them, again, there's a season to focus on the numbers, don't get me wrong. And there's power in that. However, when you focus on too much on the numbers and the outcome and so on, we forget what this is really about. Every business is about people. We're not selling products. We're not selling services. We're actually, selling that like relationship, that experience or whatever, right? It's about people. Like, we're supposed to be connecting to people. We're supposed to better their lives through our services, through our products. And, when we lose touch in that, everything feels just not fun, So I think it's really just about knowing that it's about love, and that gets to be the glue throughout our businesses, our lives. And the more we can tap into that each moment and be mindful of that, there's just more fullness and richness into every moment.
I'm being with it because that subject is the easiest one to talk about and the hardest one to live and be with for me and many others. This question of what is to love and acceptance. It's one of those conversations, I think, hopefully another time we could talk about that and record something about it or something about it, because it's being with, we love you as you are, but stop that behavior now without judging, comparing. And at a time when there's wars going on, there's really challenging things happening. And yet there is this humanity behind it. And very few people wake up, I think, with I want to be an evil thing that destroys the universe. That's not how most people operate. But we're also in a world where there's a lot that doesn't seem great going on out there. So it's a fascinating one. But really clear and agreed. And hopefully if you're listening in, you've got some value today, some insights today, and a sense of what might be possible opening up for you. We're going to sort of go in a bit of a reverse order, Yuri, if that's okay. If people want to learn more about you and what you do, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so they can reach out to me on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Yuri1C, Yuri. So the number 1 and then C. Or they can email me at thehappinessaddict@gmail.com. Or they can go to my website, which is yurichoicoaching.com.
Yeah, you're one of those people, I think once you know the name, you're easy to find. It's one of those.
Okay, good.
In the portal at course.reset. No, but it's a bit like me, and you're like, people sort of know you, but they don't know to reach out until they know they can do. And I know you've got a lot of content out there that you're sharing regularly, which they can engage with, and then other things like that to help move them forward with your courses. And I think you'll be in movies like The Secret soon. And if not, we'll go make one somehow. It's with an AI, maybe not.
You and I connected on Facebook, so people can reach out to me too there. I mean, I feel like there's so many ways these days, but I welcome them all.
Knowing how I think you operate and we operate, I think they're going to be in an event and they'll say, and now live on the stage, like, that's Yuri. It's like, doing Q&A and grab her for a coffee, have a chat. It's like, I heard you. And that's the magic of this stuff. It's these little dot connections and ripples that you couldn't make up that help other things open up. And I want to go back if we have time. You mentioned a butterfly story. Butterflies are one of my little magical things as well. I'm just curious what your butterfly story was. Oh yeah. I used to look after them as a kid. Butterflies is one of my sort of shamanic-y side. Like me, yeah, like 100%. Tell me more.
Yeah. Oh, I have so many, and that's so cool that it's also kind of like your magical, animal, insect, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think of them as like as sort of, it's like a signpost. So like, when you're driving in a car fast, you're going fast because of how the other things are moving outside the car. So for me, it was one of those domains of being things. If I was actually present, I'd notice butterflies. And over the years, when I actually am present in the moment, they tend to show up, as opposed to in our heads, like they're still there, but you just don't know.
And by the way, oh my gosh, there's so many absolutely magical butterflies here in Bali. They're just everywhere, which is one of the things I do love about this place. But so as far as my butterfly story, I mean, I have actually many around this concept of a butterfly. But so basically when my dad passed away, it became kind of the symbol for me. Whenever the butterfly's present, I felt his energy, and actually took this on from one of my best friends, Sarah, who had lost her father when she was young. And for her, she always told me, even before my dad was sick, like, hey, whenever I see a butterfly, I think of my dad. And that just became very natural for me as well. And it just became such a powerful symbol over the years. And I have so many stories around this, but I'll share 2. One is, so the day I was quitting my job, so this was a few months after my dad had passed away. And I've been thinking about quitting for a long time, even before. But again, I don't know if you have ever quit a corporate job, or if there's anyone out there who has or thinking about it. It's actually quite scary to think about, especially if you've never worked for yourself. And, when you have been really conditioned over the years that without that safety net, like, life is dangerous, right? So it was really scary for me. Anyway, so that particular day, I remember I was on the phone with one of my other best friends from high school. And I was telling my friend Bonnie, I was like, I think I really need to quit. And it was actually the day before my birthday in 2018. And I will remember this day forever. I was like, I really think I need to quit. Like, I was talking with her. And, just like trying to get the courage, like during lunch break or something. And I'm like, and I thought there's so many excuses that you could we don't realize how creative we are until we are trying to make excuses for something that we're scared to do. Like, we can literally think of millions of excuses. So with that day, my excuse was, well, I can't quit today because tomorrow's my birthday. And that just seems dramatic. Like, who cares, right? But anyway, that was my story at the time. Oh, there's a butterfly that just flew by. Anyways, so I was on the phone with her, and then literally, kid you not, Simon, this little butterfly not even flew towards me, but walked up to me. Walked up, like, walked up to me.
Hello, Yuri. Hey, hello. It's like...
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on the phone with her. And I'm like, you will never guess what's happening right now. And I had a piece of paper in my hand at the time. So I like stuck that out and then it hopped on my piece of paper, like walked on it. I'm like, okay. So then I lift my piece of paper, it was still there. We're literally eye gazing at this point, like me and the butterfly. And I'm like, okay, Dad, like if this is not a sign, I don't know what is. I was like, Bonnie, I got my answer. I'm going to go quit right now. I literally went inside, quit. That was my sign. And yeah, and haven't regretted it since. So that is one of my stories. Another story actually was in Bali a couple of years ago. I was in Bali for a business mastermind / retreat. And one day we're in the middle of this mastermind. And at the time, like someone's like, oh my gosh, there's someone that knew my story. They're like, Yuri, look behind you. Literally, the biggest butterfly I've ever seen in my life. It was like bigger than my face. I don't know how this exists. It was like a dinosaur butterfly. And it was like right behind me. And in that moment, and by the way, that was like a year or two after my dad had passed away. So I was very much like present to all these signs, even more intensely. And so anyway, so I was like, oh my gosh. So, in that moment, I was like, thank you, Dad. Like, thank you for the sign kind of thing, and released it. Later that day, a couple hours later, I go to the Indonesian Google. And you know how sometimes Google tells you like if it's like a special holiday or whatever?
Yeah.
It was Indonesian Father's Day. And that like made me break down in tears. I'm like, wow, like that could not have happened on another day where this would have been so profound. And yeah, so I have millions of stories like this around a butterfly and so many other things. And, I do think that there's certain times in our lives more so than others where the veil is kind of thin to the spiritual world, especially, when you're moving through these experiences of losing somebody to the other side or you're kind of just like tapped into that space, which at the time, I think I was both. So there was lots of things that were happening during that time more than ever. So what about you? What was your story? Or what is your story?
We haven't got time today, but we will.
Okay.
No, because this is about you, not about me, and that's part of the game.
Yeah.
And I will, as a sort of gift back to your great aunt, there's a book called The Tao or the Tao is Silent. And it's an amazing book by a crazy mathematician about this subject that you're sort of speaking at. And the bit for you and for listeners that just seems apt today, if you don't know music, like you don't know jazz, you don't know hip hop, you don't know classical, right? Whatever it may be, and you hear music, it's just noise. If you have those grounded distinctions, you hear the artistry, you hear the music. Mm-hmm. In the stuff we're talking about, it isn't like, oh my God, the butterfly fairy says Yuri should be a goddess. Da, 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 da. That works for you, good luck, but there's a fine line of grounded reality. There's also a bit where yourself, you spot stuff and synchronicities and the bit of like, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's some of that goes on that you're just like, okay. And when that becomes not panicky and weird, not in some schizophrenic, that means this must do this, but it's a way of you helping calibrate in a tool and you're working with nature, 100% different stuff. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, the butterfly happened and you went, aha, this is an alien talking to me. No, it was just, it's a nudging for your own choices and getting you back into that magic as opposed to I follow the instructions and I build the Lego bricks. Which, what I think you've been through with your clients and hopefully reminding us they're listening, you could go make $1 million a day for the next 100 years. It doesn't matter. And a lot of entrepreneurs, it's the sales result. I sold my company for 9 figures. Jolly good. Are you a nice human being? Probably not. Maybe you are. I don't know. But Pablo Escobar was a very successful making money person. I don't think that's the role model for most of us. And I'm keeping it sort of polite for the show, Yuri, because I'm trying to not sort of bawl my eyes out on the phone with you. There's a whole lot of stuff to talk about in time. And I'm just curious, if you enjoyed the conversation, who would you love us to be interviewing as a guest like this? Who do you think Wayne Dyer would have been fab? Unfortunately, we can't get him in the physical these days. Who would you love as a guest on the show?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. This was a very beautiful conversation and you're such a great host and you ask amazing questions and you're a great listener. I really just enjoyed this experience with you. So thank you so much. And as far as your question goes, this is so bizarre, but the other day I had a dream that Joe Rogan was in my dream and we were like having the best conversation. We're at this party. I think I've been listening to too much of Joe Rogan during my cocoon
experience. Yeah.
So I would love to pick his brain. I think he's just a, great interviewer, great listener.
Let's put it out there. Joe Rogan, this is one step away. Like the irony is, this is how odd it is these days. All those people are 2 conversations away. And
it really is.
And it's this fine line. You this is a manifestation bit. There's like, we're going to go after it. So Joe, for listening in, love to have you on the show. Maybe Yuri's interview. Blah, blah, blah. And there's also just being in the right place and being committed but unattached to it. And I don't know. And I'm scared of Joe. It's interesting. Not scared of Joe, but there's a bit of like, because part of my thing, I like being a hidden secret. So maybe if we get Joe Rogan, you could interview him. That could be fun.
That'd be so cool. I mean, I think he over the years, he's gained so much wisdom and knowledge just by talking to so many cool people too. So that would be amazing. Or Elon Musk. I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk. I know there's a lot of controversies around him and no one's perfect. I get that, but I do think that his brain is fascinating. So
it's what we touched on at the start of the show. Like the games he's playing, most people don't even have a sense of what that is to play. Like most people like, what do you mean you could buy a social media company for billions? That's not normal. Yes, I'm right about getting milk from the supermarket. It's still life and being with this energy information, and it's fascinating. And then
I think it's hilarious. What he's doing.
It is, yeah. And no one knows what's coming next. I've had friends know him, work with him. I've never met him directly, but it's interesting when you know some of the bigger things he's up to and how he operates isn't how most people operate. Therefore, they don't understand what he's doing and why he's doing it. So
yes, totally. That's why I'm fascinated by him, because he literally lives in a very abundant mindset. And I think people are triggered by him. And I'm not saying everything he's done is perfect, but a lot of the things that he does, I mean, he literally thinks there is no limit, right? We're literally trying to go to Mars. I find his mind very fascinating. And I also believe that anything he's learned through SpaceX or one of his companies, or maybe all of them, he doesn't care if people replicate it or do more research around it or build something from it. He's very open with his information because he truly does believe and live in that, embodiment of abundant mindset. I really admire that. Yeah.
He's also got to a grounded experiential reality to play it in. So one of the problems is the same behavior is the perfect behavior, optimal behavior in one environment, not another. And it's this fine line between collaboration, survival, thrivability. And there's a whole... This is one of those deeper subjects for a different day, but this whole thing of how do the global community collaborate when you've got 2 billion people less than $1 a day, and you've got other people living a life of hanging out in St. Bart's for 3 months. It's fascinating. There's no right or wrong. And hopefully we are in a season where things start to shift into more collaborations, not less. And as we said, we're going to sort of pause and stop and have a little moment to just... So Yuri, the last word, apart from ending the show, is with me, but the last word for you, anything you want to wrap up the show with, Yuri? So sort of, and again, we've gone not over time, but we've covered, I hope, a sense of some deep stuff.
Yes, we really did. Yeah. I mean, the hour just went by so fast. And I think that really speaks volumes about what a great host you are. So I really appreciate that and asking these questions. I think with the personal kind of thing, a personal event that's been present for me today, just to go tell people that you love them, the people that you get to, tell them, but you don't enough, whoever that is for you or what people those are for you. Do that today. I think we just never know. So that's really what's present for me today.
Well, you are loved, Yuri, and Mama love you. And if you're listening, we love you in the way we can.
Thank you so much.
Keep my sort of smart Simon. And look, the truth of it is the only reason the show's flowing is because of you. I'm just a space, and I'm a student of the stuff you've been sharing and other people. So you impact us and you make a difference to me, helping us impact others. And if you're listening in, to pay it forward, just go tell somebody you love them, acknowledge them, and share this message that Yuri's been sharing, these reminders that everything can be working out for you, that everything has a season, and rather than fight it, be with that and honor it. And as she said, in that every moment you get to choose to live from fear or scarcity, or instead from loving and abundance. And so with that said, it's time for us to pause, stop, reset, and hopefully we'll see you on the next show. Yuri, thank you so much. Any final words?
No, thank you so much. It's been so amazing to speak with you and be in this space. So thank you.
So be inspired by Yuri in your own life and go create your own happiness. Bye for now. Once again, I'm Simon Hedley. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset, which is brought to you by the team at simonx.com and published by thesimpleidea.com. So you get maximum value and to access all the bonuses and gifts, make sure to head to pausestopReset.com, register and explore the portal. And if you're looking for great people, check out onesmartnetwork.com. If you've enjoyed the show, do give us a positive review, subscribe, and share this episode with friends. I can't wait to share our next episode with you. Till then, remember you can always choose to pause, stop, reset.